I never thought parking disputes could lead to all-out war, but that's exactly what happened when Karen parked in my driveway last year. For those who missed that story, I locked her car behind my gate and left for a week-long vacation. Her car sat trapped in my driveway while she sent desperate texts and even called the police, who told her she was in the wrong. I thought that was the end of it. I was catastrophically wrong. For months after I returned, Karen avoided me. No eye contact, no conversation, just icy silence and occasional death glares from across the street. The neighborhood seemed to return to normal, and I'd almost forgotten about our little feud until that rainy Tuesday morning 3 weeks ago. Heading to work, coffee in hand, I noticed something off about my car. As I got closer, my stomach dropped. All 4 tires, completely flat, not just flat, slashed, and tucked under my windshield wiper, a note with 2 words. Round 2, IVI, driveway saga wasn't over. It had only just begun, and Karen was playing for keeps. I called the police, filed a report, but without cameras pointing directly at my car, there wasn't much they could do. Neighborhood dispute, they noted, probably filing my case under petty suburban drama. I installed security cameras that, same day, front yard, backyard, driveway, everything. Karen wasn't catching me unprepared again. When I told Mike what happened, he wasn't surprised. "She's been asking questions about your schedule for weeks," he said, lowering his voice. "Thought it was weird, but you know how she gets with everyone." Great. Karen was stalking me now. For the next few days, I watched her like a hawk. She seemed almost too normal, watering her plants and collecting her mail with exaggerated casualness. She even waved at me once, a sickeningly sweet smile plastered across her face. That's when I knew for certain Karen was just getting started. A week later, my doorbell rang at 5 a.m. Standing on my porch were 2 police officers, looking tired and irritated. "Sir, we've received noise complaints about your property," one explained. "Noise complaints? I've been asleep," the officer sighed. "Caller reported loud music since 3 a.m. I showed them inside. Complete silence. They looked around, confused, before finally leaving with half-hearted apologies. Through my window, I caught Karen peeking through her blinds. When our eyes met, she didn't even try to hide. She just smirked. This became a pattern. 3 more. Noise complaints over 2 weeks, always at ridiculous hours. The officers became less sympathetic each time. Then came the HOA notices, violations for decorations I never put up, and modifications I never made. Someone was filing bogus reports. And we all knew who. "She's going to get bored eventually," Mrs. Thompson assured me when I vented my frustrations. Karen's always been all bark, no bite. But Mrs. Thompson was wrong. Karen wasn't getting bored, she was getting creative. I was at work when Mike called me, his voice urgent. "Dude, you need to get home now." I pulled into my driveway 20 minutes later to find a small crowd gathered near my house. Several neighbors were arguing with what appeared to be animal control officers. 3 cages sat on my lawn. "What's going on?" I asked, pushing through. One officer approached me. "Are you the homeowner? We received reports of multiple neglected animals on your property. Caller claimed you're running an illegal breeding operation." "What? I don't even have pets." After an hour of explaining and showing them around my very pet-free house, they finally left. The neighbors dispersed, whispering among themselves. "It was Karen," Mike confirmed, hanging back. "She called them this morning. Said you had a dozen sick puppies locked in your garage. This was beyond petty revenge now. This was harassment." I marched across the street, ready for confrontation, but Karen's house was dark, her car gone. That evening I received an anonymous text. "Having fun yet?" I didn't respond, but I did call my cousin Rachel, who happened to be a lawyer. She listened patiently before sighing heavily. "You could file for harassment," she explained. But without concrete proof linking these incidents to her, it's your word against hers. Trail of texts, video evidence of her damaging property. I had nothing except circumstantial evidence and neighborhood gossip. The next day, a certified letter arrived. The HOA was fining me $500 for repeated noise violations and property modifications. Attached were photos, doctored images of graffiti on my garage door and speakers on my lawn, photos that had clearly been manipulated. Karen had friends on the HOA board who were either fooled by her evidence or willing to look the other way. I was at my breaking point when Mike invited me over for a beer that weekend. "She's telling everyone she's getting revenge for what you did," he explained, handing me a cold bottle. "Says you cost her thousands in car repairs after that driveway stunt." "That's ridiculous. Her car was fine." "Maybe so, but half the neighborhood believes her. The other half is just enjoying the show." I took a long sip, thinking, I need to end this, Mike. How? She's clearly willing to go further than most normal people. That's when I noticed the flyer on Mike's counter, a neighborhood block party scheduled for next weekend. Host, Karen. "She's hosting the annual block party?" I asked, pointing. "Yeah, first time. Apparently her husband is some big shot at the company sponsoring it. She's been planning it for months." A slow smile spread across my face. If Karen wanted war, I'd give her one, but on my terms, not hers. The block party would be her moment of glory, her chance to regain neighborhood status. It would also be the perfect opportunity for me to finally end this feud once and for all. The day before the block party, disaster struck. I returned home to find water pouring from under my front door, flooding my entryway. I rushed inside to find my kitchen sink overflowing, water everywhere. The valve to shut it off had been tampered with, broken in a way that looked accidental but wasn't. The plumber confirmed my suspicions. Someone did this deliberately. See how the connection's been partially cut, designed to burst when enough pressure built up. 4 hours and $700 later, my kitchen was a mess of industrial fans and dehumidifiers. I sat on my porch steps, surveying the damage when Karen strolled by, walking her dog. "Having some trouble?" she asked, voice dripping with fake concern. Plumbing can be so unpredictable. Something in me snapped, the slashed tires, the false reports, and now flooding my house. This wasn't petty revenge anymore, this was criminal. "I know what you're doing," I said quietly. "It stops now, or what?" she interrupted, leaning close enough that only I could hear. "You have no proof of anything. Meanwhile, everyone's coming to my party tomorrow while you clean up your little water problem." She walked away, shoulders shaking with silent laughter. That's when I made my decision. No more playing defense, no more taking the high road. Karen needed to be stopped, and the block party was my only chance. I called Mike immediately. "I need your help, and Mrs. Thompson's. Actually, everyone who's sick of Karen's behavior." "What are you planning?" he asked cautiously. "Justice," I replied. "But I can't do it alone." That night, as my fans hummed in the background, drying out my ruined floors, I sat at my kitchen table with 5 neighbors who'd had enough of Karen's reign of terror. Together, we devised a plan for the block party. A plan that would either end this war once and for all, or escalate it beyond repair. "Are you sure about this?" Mrs. Thompson asked. "It's rather extreme." I looked around at my water-damaged home, thinking of the thousands in repairs, the sleepless nights, the constant anxiety of wondering what she'd do next. "I'm sure," I said firmly. Tomorrow, Karen learns that actions have consequences. The day of the block party arrived, sunny and perfect. Karen had transformed her front yard into a Pinterest-worthy gathering space. String lights, a rented tent, catered food, and even a small stage for announcements. Her husband, a tall man, with an expensive watch and permanent frown, supervised as vendors set up tables. "Remember, I told my makeshift team as we huddled in Mike's garage. Timing is everything. Phase 1 began at noon. Mrs. Thompson, respected chairwoman of the neighborhood garden club, arrived early to help Karen with final preparations. Her real mission: plant the USB drive I'd given her in Karen's laptop, the one connected to the projector for her husband's presentation. "It's in place," Mrs. Thompson texted an hour later, computers unattended in the living room. Phase 2. Mike and Todd positioned themselves near the electrical panel on the side of Karen's house, ready for their cue. My cousin Rachel, the IGU lawyer, arrived fashionably late, mingling casually while keeping an eye on Karen's husband. By 2 p.m., the party was in full swing. Nearly the entire neighborhood had shown up, some to enjoy the free food, others anticipating drama. Karen glided through the crowd, playing the perfect hostess, occasionally glancing my way with thinly veiled contempt when I arrived. "Surprised? You could make it," she said, handing me a drink. "Given your plumbing situation." I smiled. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." At precisely 3 p.m., Karen's husband tapped a microphone on the small stage, calling for everyone's attention. Karen beamed at his side. "Thank you all for coming to our first annual Wilson Block Party," he began. "As many of you know, my company is proud to sponsor this community event. Before we continue the festivities, I've prepared a short presentation about our neighborhood improvement initiatives." That was my cue. I nodded slightly at Mike, who pressed the button on his phone. Seconds later, the power to Karen's house cut off, just long enough for the laptop to switch to battery mode and reset its connection to the projector. Karen's husband frowned at the momentary dimming of the lights. "Technical difficulties," he joked as the system rebooted. As I was saying, the projector flickered back to life, but instead of his corporate PowerPoint, something else appeared on the screen. Security footage from my house. The timestamp showed 7:14 a.m. the previous day. Karen, clearly recognizable, approaching my front door with what looked like pliers, fiddling with something off camera, then hurrying away. "What is this?" Karen's husband stopped mid-sentence, squinting at the screen. The footage changed. Karen in my driveway at 2 a.m. slashing my tires. Then another clip. Karen speaking with someone in an HOA jacket, handing them an envelope. One more. Karen on her phone outside my house the day animal control arrived. The crowd gasped collectively. Karen's face drained of color. "Turn it off," she shrieked, lunging toward the laptop just as Rachel smoothly intercepted her. "I wouldn't do that," Rachel advised calmly. "Destroying evidence isn't a good look." "Evidence?" Karen's husband echoed, his voice dangerously quiet. I stepped forward. "Security footage from my property over the past month. You're looking at criminal mischief, destruction of property, filing false reports, and as of yesterday, criminal damage resulting in over 5,000 in water damage to my home." Karen's husband turned to her, his expression thunderous. "Is this why our insurance premiums went up? The car maintenance charges on our credit card?" Karen sputtered, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. "He started it. He locked my car in his driveway for a week." "After you parked in my private property without permission," I corrected. "I'd already filed these with the police, but thought your husband might want to see them too." The final clip played. Karen's admission from yesterday, clear as day thanks to the microphone I'd been wearing. "You have no proof of anything. Meanwhile, everyone's coming to my party tomorrow while you clean up your little water problem." Dead silence fell over the gathering. Karen's husband removed his jacket, handed it to her, and said something in her ear that made her face crumple. He turned to address the stunned crowd. "Please enjoy the rest of the party. I need to make some calls." He walked stiffly into the house, phone already at his ear. Karen stood frozen, clutching his jacket, as neighbors began to whisper around her. Some quietly slipped away, others watched with undisguised fascination. Mrs. Thompson approached her, voice gentle but firm. "Dear, I think it's time you stepped away from the HOA board. In fact, several of us have already signed a petition." She held up a tablet with a digital form, already filled with signatures. Karen's eyes darted wildly between the faces surrounding her, searching for allies and finding none. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "It was just a joke, just getting even." "Flooding someone's house isn't a joke," Todd said. "Neither is filing false reports or slashing tires." "The police are very interested in these videos," I added, "but I told them I'd give you a chance to make it right first." Karen's shoulders slumped in defeat. "What do you want?" I handed her an envelope. Inside was an itemized list: cost of tire replacements, plumbing repairs, water damage restoration, security system installation, and legal consultation fees. The total, $7,230. Pay for the damages, resign from the HOA, and leave all of us, alone, I said. "Or we can let the police handle it." Her husband emerged from the house, face grim. "Sign whatever he wants," he snapped, "and pack a bag. You're staying with your sister until I figure out what to do about this mess." As Karen retreated into her house, the tension broke. Someone turned the music back on. The party resumed, now with an entirely different atmosphere. Neighbors approached me one by one, some with stories of their own Karen encounters, others simply offering support or congratulations. Mike handed me a fresh drink, clinking his glass against mine. "That," he said with undisguised admiration, "was worth waiting a year to see." 3 days later, a courier delivered a check for the full amount. The envelope included a formal letter of resignation from the HOA board, signed by Karen, and a stiffly worded apology that was clearly written by her husband's lawyer. Karen moved out the following week. Divorce papers followed a month after that. Apparently, the block party incident was the final straw in an already strained marriage. Her husband kept the house but travels so much for work that we rarely see him. The neighborhood has been peaceful ever since. The HOA elected Mrs. Thompson as their new chairperson, ushering in a more reasonable era of community governance. My security cameras stay on though. Once bitten, twice shy. Sometimes I think about Karen and wonder if I went too far. Then I remember my flooded kitchen, the slashed tires, the sleepless nights waiting for her next attack. No, justice was served. This experience taught me something valuable. Stand your ground against bullies, but do it smart. Document everything. Build alliances. And when the time comes to act, make it count. Oh, and if you're wondering, yes, I did frame a copy of Karen's check. It hangs in my newly renovated kitchen, a reminder that sometimes, just sometimes, karma needs a little help. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe if you enjoyed, and let me know in the comments. What would you have done?